Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Food Origins Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Firecracker Farm, and if you're watching, you guys will be able to see it. They are a company out of Florida that infuse hot peppers into sea salt. Really awesome stuff. I've been using it for over a year now. They come in these awesome push grinders. This is a special buddy batch called Snake Eater. It's infused with Tennessee bourbon and bitters. Really cool stuff. I love using this on eggs in the morning, steak as a finisher. Really good stuff. Some of my two favorites also is Pineapple Express and Apocalypto. And 10% of the proceeds go to Op 300 and Pipe Hitter Foundation. Get that in there for you guys. And I have a discount code 10% off Food Origins Pod C at firecracker.farm. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. It's an awesome episode.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Food Origins Podcast. Today I have Jared Montarbo here, live and ready. Excited to have you on, man. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, and appreciate you being on.
Yeah, excited to be on.
So, Chef Jared Montalvo, he's Bay Area native. We'll get into that. He went to the California Culinary Academy at 17 years old, and he has worked under Wolfgang Puck at a lot of his restaurants: Spago, Post Rio, Brasserie Puck, Lupo, executive chef in Colorado for Spago. And then I know him as working at Alexander's and Niku Butcher Shop. So, Jared, thanks for being here, man.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Yeah. The easiest thing for me to get into is, what'd you eat as a kid?
To be completely honest with you, I was very big into food from a young age. I remember my grandma. My grandma was an amazing cook. She, of course, used to host big parties and just cook everything from scratch. And she had a Lebanese background, so she definitely cooked, pretty much a lot of variety of everything. But I just remember as a kid, one day she was watching me. I think I was like 18 months old, and my parents were on vacation, and my mom's talking to her, and she goes, "Oh, how's Jared doing?" She goes, "Oh, he's great. He's just enjoying a bowl of linguine and clams, and just enjoying himself." And my mom's like, "Oh my gosh!" So from a young age, I've just always been into food, and I've just pretty much loved everything, which was nice. It's funny because growing up, as a kid, my mom was, very healthy and all into eating a lot of health stuff, and which is not a bad thing, but I wasn't exposed to a lot of variety of things, I should say, until actually going to the culinary school and realizing that there's a lot more. Like, I thought, button mushrooms and the white and brown mushrooms were the only mushrooms that were around, until going and really expanding your horizons and seeing that there's, hundreds of different varieties of mushrooms, edible and non-edible, of course, but, very cool. So yeah, I've always been into food from, very young age, and just always really fascinated me, and I love to eat, so who doesn't?
Yeah, that's why we're here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, is there an experience when you're younger that kind of curtailed you to be going like, yeah, I want to be a chef?
Well, to be completely honest with you, I just remember, very vividly every time, my grandma used to have a little red stool for me, and every time I used to go and hang out and be up at her house, and I used to always be in, she was always in the kitchen, and I feel like I was always in the kitchen with her, and I used to have my little red stool that I would go get out of the pantry and just put there, and just be able to, of course, be counter height with her. And it was great because, I mean, those are some of my best memories, is just cooking with my grandma and just having my little red stool to just be in the kitchen and helping her out, and just tasting and smelling and learning everything. And we used to actually go and pick blackberries. My grandpa would take us all the time to pick blackberries, and we used to go down this little river, and as kids with our rain boots and everything, and pick all these blackberries and bring them back up to my grandma, and she used to make, jam, and it was very cool to see just all the different things. And jam was always, I love jam. I mean, I should say I love everything, but it was very cool to, see her, be able to see it from us picking the fruit to being able to her turn it into something and preserving it and being able to have something for, down the road. And yeah, I just remember always being in the kitchen with her, and I just loved it, always being hands on. And it's funny because I never actually knew I really wanted to be a chef or go down the culinary route. I just kind of, I ended up, of course, not every kid likes to go to school, which I wasn't a big fan of going to school. And I think it was middle of my junior year, and I was like, man, I really don't like to go to school. I said, I need to get out of here, do something. So I told my parents that I wanted to get out of school, and they're like, well, you need to graduate and whatnot. So I ended up taking the GED exam, and I remember they give you, the whole day to pretty much do this exam, and I went in to do this exam, and I was in and out within an hour, and they're like, you sure you don't want to, double check, just to make sure? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I mean, for me, it seemed like a very, easy exam. And so of course I go home, and my parents like, well, we should still make sure you continue to do your homework in school just in case, it takes 6 weeks for you to get the results. And of course, me, I'm just like, no, didn't even bring a backpack, just sat there. I'm like, I already knew I passed. And then I get the results, and sure enough, I passed. And so of course now I'm middle of my junior year, don't have to go to school, and started doing construction with my dad. And I'm like, I don't know if this is really the right thing, because I'm not really a fan of construction. And my parents are just like, listen, figure out what you want to do. I know you like to work on cars and race your whole cars around. I know you love to cook. I know you love to do some different things. Just think about what you want to do and just figure it out, and we'll see what we can do. So of course, a couple of days later, I just it's like, you know what, I think I really want to just dive more into the culinary arts and cooking. And so remember, we went and booked an appointment up at the Culinary Academy up in San Francisco, and I just fell in love. We did a tour of the school, and I was just seeing all the different classes and all the different, just everything. I was like, man, this is amazing. I said, I need to be a part of this. So ended up signing up for culinary school, and that was kind of that. I think that was, it was kind of cool, because I ended up graduating culinary school when my class graduated high school, and I just kind of went on and began my career in cooking, and it was great.
And that's fast, right? Like, what was culinary school like? And kind of give us a little background. Where'd you grow up, and then which culinary school did you go to, and then how long was it? And
So I grew
that.
up in Morgan Hill, so in the Bay Area.
Okay.
I grew up there and went to high school at Live Oak, and then I decided ended up going to culinary school. Well, actually, before culinary school, before I actually started cooking or anything, I got a job at this small little restaurant called the Golden Oak. It was in our hometown, been around forever, and just to kind of see if it was even something that I would even want to do. I remember my first task going in there is there was this whole sink full of shrimp. I think there was probably about 25 pounds of shrimp in this sink, and they were like, yeah, these all need to be peeled for tonight's service. And I'm just sitting there this whole time like, damn, like, is this what it's like to be a chef? Like, I don't even know. I don't know if this is really what I want to do, And then it was funny because I remember, I'm sitting there for just hours peeling shrimp. And at this point, like, I'm getting hungry, and, I'm in this kitchen that I don't really know much because, it's my first time even in the kitchen. And it was funny because I was like, I'm starving, and I see this huge mixing bowl that's next to me, and there's nobody around. And what looked like was mashed potatoes in there. So I went to take a big spoonful. It turned out to be whipped butter. And of course, I take this big old spoonful thinking it's mashed potatoes, trying to sneak a bite of something. And I was like, oh my gosh. So between that and peeling all these shrimp all day, I'm like, man, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. So then, of course, fast forward, me going, to getting my GED and all that, and going to the culinary school. That's when, I really, I went to culinary school in San Francisco, the California Culinary Academy. This was way back in, I think it was 2002, I believe, or 2003. This is back when they did 2 tiers, so they did a morning and a nighttime class. So it was a little bit longer hours, about an 8-hour program a day. And so I started, and I was in the morning program, and like I said, I loved it. And my mom, I was getting towards the end of the schooling. The schooling was 15 months, so 12 months was the actual school, and then 3 months was the externship. And so my mom knew the general manager of Spago in Palo Alto at the time, Alex Resnick. And, of course, me going to culinary school, she goes, I want to take you to nice restaurants so you can just kind of really see how things are and whatnot. So I remember I went there for my first kind of fine dining experience, and I met, of course, Alex, who my mom knew, and I met the chef, and I was just so fascinated. I just really wanted to come and learn more. So I remember I was, of course, talking to the chef, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be done with my schooling coming up. And, I basically got my externship set up there. And I remember I would, come in on my days off. So on the weekends, I would basically go work for free just to go get more experience. And I mean, I just loved it. I was 18 years old at the time.
Yeah.
I was just all about, my career and, just learning as much as I could. So I was going in on my days off and just working for free. And next thing you know, about 4 months before my externship was set up, chef called me and said, hey, one of my line cooks is, leaving and, basically offered me a job. So I was stoked. And at this point, I'm still in school, in culinary school. So, I'm driving from Morgan Hill up to San Francisco every morning to get to school. I'm waking up about 4 o'clock in the morning and getting on the road by 5, trying to get to San Francisco by 7 to go to school from 7 to about 2, and then driving straight from San Francisco to Palo Alto, working from, 3 till 10, 11 o'clock and going home and doing it all over again. But I loved it. I mean, it was so much fun. So ended up basically working. I already had a job, so I just basically worked through my externship, and it was great. I kind of started there, and I started, doing all the prep and sauces and stocks and, all the prep work in the beginning. And then I moved to pantry station and learning all the salads and cool appetizers and whatnot. And then from there, they moved me to pasta station. And then at the time, the sous chef left, and the sous chef we did a lot of banquets. This is at Spago still here in Palo Alto. We did a lot of banquets. So I kind of took on a lot of the duties of the sous chef, but, of course, didn't have the title. I was still super young. And at that point, I was doing, a lot of banquets and offsites and catering. I mean, I remember doing, being responsible for, parties up at like Fogarty Winery and stuff like that. I think I was like 18 or 19 years old, and I'm like, running these parties, and which is kind of wild thinking back that, such a young age. And then I remember every time Wolfgang would come and do events, he would come, once or twice a year and come do special dinners and whatnot. Every time he'd come, the chef would just basically have me work side by side with Wolf and just whatever he would need and, whatnot. So I remember after the first few times, all the corporate chefs who were out from LA and Vegas, or mostly from Vegas, I think, they're just like, man, who's this kid who's always working with, Wolfgang every time he comes out, and we see him all the time. And so they basically had me come out to Vegas. They're like, oh, let's bring him out to Vegas and kind of show him, obviously Vegas is a lot busier and a lot different than, here in the Bay Area. So
High
I remember
volume too, right?
very high volume.
Yeah.
So I remember they flew me out there to, basically go stay there for a weekend. And, I think I'm like 21 years old at this point, and they got me this huge suite in Mandalay Bay. So I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like, I have this massive suite, and I'm here, and so I go to work the first day, and they start showing me, they put me on the line with the sous chef and whatnot. And mind you, they're a busy restaurant, doing like 400 or 500 covers a night. Obviously, it's not like here in the Bay Area when you're doing maybe 100, 200 is a busy night,
Yep.
So they put me on the line with the sous chef, and he's kind of showing me, as tickets are coming in, he's showing me, pick up each dish and what goes in it and how to make it. And next thing you know, after he had showed me kind of one of each, as the other tickets start coming in, the chefs start calling out tickets, and I just kind of just took it upon myself and started firing food and, whatnot. And so next thing you know, after service time, they sit me down and they're like, hey, we'd love to offer you a job. Would you like to come to Vegas? And, I'm like super excited because I'm like, man, this is a huge step for my career to be able to come out here and, of course, still work with Wolfgang. So I go back and put in my 2-week notice. But of course, my 2-week notice, they're like the chef and the GM, Alex, were sitting down and they're like, listen, we can't let you leave yet because, you do too much. We need to find someone to replace you first. Mind you, I'm, work all the stations and doing all the banquets and pretty much everything there.
Yeah.
And so my 2-week notice turned into 2 months. So I'm like, calling the chefs in Vegas and like, listen, just whenever they let you go or whenever they find somebody, we have a job for you here. So, after about 2 months, I finally, moved to Vegas, started working at Spago, working on the line. And then within a few months, a new chef came along, Erick Klein, who is actually to this day, my mentor, and he pretty much taught me almost everything I know. He came on board, and shortly after that, I got promoted to, junior sous chef, and he kind of took me under his wing and kind of went from there. And he kind of showed me the ropes and kind of really molded me into uh, not just a chef, but kind of like the person I am today, which is pretty amazing. Great human being, great person. So
That's awesome. Everyone's probably wondering your first impressions and what was it like working with Wolfgang Puck?
To be honest with you, it was great. I mean, he's super, super nice guy. It was very cool just to kind of see him pivot on recipes, and of course, me being at such a young age, and just being kind of just first introduced into the culinary world, just kind of seeing somebody at that level being able to, obviously, I kind of knew I knew what we were making because the chef had presented me the menu. We had been prepping it, the week prior and whatnot, and then just seeing him come in and not being happy with one ingredient and just kind of turning this whole thing around and making something just beautiful out of something that wasn't even planned. I was like, wow, that's amazing, So it kind of really drew me in even more. So it was very cool. And I've done a lot of work with Wolfgang for quite some time, and occasionally I'll still do work even to this day on events and things that they have going on. I mean, not so much now that with my new job, but definitely do a lot of things with him previously, and occasionally if I have the time and the availability.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta ask, like, what are some of your favorite dishes that you guys made?
I personally love making Peking duck. That's one of my favorite things. I learned how to make it kind of on my off season of being a chef in Colorado. We were up in the mountains, obviously, so we were closed, you know, 3 months out of the year during the spring and the summertime, or in the spring and the fall, I should say. So I would get some time, and I would spend a couple weeks in LA, a couple weeks in Vegas, and I learned how to make the Peking ducks at his restaurant 24. So where I first learned how to make it, and I just remember going back, and I was super fascinated by just the whole process, and using the compressor to blow up the ducks and dipping them and drying them. And so over the years of me being in Colorado, I was in Colorado for almost 6 years,
Okay.
and it was cool because I kind of just over the time just kind of figured out my own kind of recipe and kind of did a few tweaks and a little spice rub and here and there, made some different things, and turned out that I actually loved making them. I used to have it on the menu as a special every Saturday, and I mean they would sell out. I would do 12 ducks, which was 24 orders, and
Mhm.
everybody who would come, they would know that it would be Saturday special, so they would have it. And next thing I would have 20 of the 24 ducks already pre-ordered for the following Saturday of just people who already would want them, and it was a hit. And it's still one of my favorite things to make. I mean, it's a process, but like I said, I mean, with cooking good food, it's a labor of love. You know what I mean? It's either you love it or you don't. So
Yeah, for sure. And no matter how tedious the payoff, when you see the customer happy, that's like the best part.
yeah, that's one thing that I love. It's like all the hard work just pays off when you get to see that customer and their reaction, and just that smile you can put on somebody's face, and it's great.
Yeah. You mentioned Chef Erick Klein, but tell us about him and tell us his influence with you. And since he was your kind of mentor through a lot of your career, yeah, tell us how that
So
was and how he
yeah, so I
influenced you.
met him. I met him at. He is actually a longtime chef of Wolfgang Puck. I think he's been with Wolfgang for over 30 years now,
Mm.
long, long time. But he first came on board Spago in Vegas. I think it was 2006, I believe. And like I said, I was very, very young. I think 21 or 22, and that was when I first got promoted to junior sous chef. And so he was he kind of showed me the ropes of management, managing people, and of course, being a young manager and not just being about cooking. And not only did he teach me a lot about cooking, but just a lot of stuff in life, just growing up as a young man, and almost like a second father figure type to me. But he's actually now he's the vice president of culinary and runs all of Wolfgang Puck catering in Los Angeles. So and of course all the catering all around that Wolfgang has. So he's in charge of course all the big events, the Oscars and the Grammys and all the large parties and everything that he does. So he has a very, very big role. So that's what he does currently now.
That's awesome.
But yeah, he ran Spago in Vegas for, I mean, don't quote me on the number, but I want to say 10 to 15 years, I believe. I mean, a very, very long time.
Yeah.
He was there before Wolf asked him to come over and take over the catering in LA.
That's awesome. A lot of people wonder because like these, a lot of the high end restaurants, it's kind of a high pressure situation. A lot of times, it's always VIPs. Everyone's a VIP walking in there. So, what's it like to balance that? Being creative, being consistent, making sure the food's where it needs to be, and then seeing that pressure that comes in. That the
Well,
rush.
one thing that, of course, Erick Klein did drill into our heads was consistency, because consistency is, the hardest thing to achieve in the kitchen, especially when you have multiple different cooks and line cooks and prep cooks and everybody. And so, one thing he always taught us was to be consistent. That's the hardest thing. So to make sure, and of course, taste your food, right? So if you don't taste your food, you don't know, what it's going to taste like. But he did, you know, he really, he really taught us a lot as far as, just really taking your time to prep, and really, taking pride is the biggest thing. Taking pride in what you do, and to really stand behind what you're doing, and to be able to create a dish. And we created a lot. I mean, when he came, we created a whole recipe book from the ground up from Spago. So that was really cool to be able to be a part of developing, the foundation of kind of what we did. And we had such a great team back then, where everybody really cared so much about the food, and so passionate about just being the best. Like, we all wanted to just be the best every day, and to just make people happy. I mean, we had such, I mean, I remember when he first started, I mean, we just kept pushing and pushing, and because we all wanted more, and it was great. I mean, at one point, I think we had like 40 or 50 items on the menu. I mean, it was insane. Um, but it was so much fun. I mean, we were doing, 400 or 500 covers every single night, sometimes 600 covers at
Ooh.
night. And, it was great. And I remember I was running the grill station, and that was, I love working the grills, one of my favorite stations. And I mean, I just remember that I mean, it was so busy, and we had so many things coming off the grill. And I loved it because, every special, I'm like, let's put it on the grill, chef. Let's put it on the grill, just because I wanted to see how far I could go before, I would, be able to break. But it was just so much fun, and, just to be able to be a part of that, and to be able to still deal with the rush, and to deal with all these people coming in, but to still, you know, do amazing food and do beautiful food. And it was pretty incredible to look back and see how much food that we pumped out of that kitchen with the line that we had and the team that we had. And it was very, very cool. So he definitely taught us a lot, and he's definitely one who's extremely passionate about food and loves food. So I mean, like I said, that's where I get it from. So, if it
That's
wasn't for
awesome.
him, I wouldn't be kind of where I'm at now. So
Right on. And then where'd you go? At what point did you leave the Wolfgang Puck and then move on to other
so
things?
actually, so after so I was in uh let's see, I was in Vegas. So I moved to Vegas when I was about 21, and so I spent some time in Vegas. I started at Spago. I was at Spago, and then of course I got promoted under Chef Erick, and he kind of mentored me and trained me. And then they were redoing Postrio. They're kind of remodeling the restaurant and changing the menu and whatnot. So, and they were kind of doing a lot of like Spago style food. So they ended up moving me over there as the executive sous chef. And so I was
Post
there
Rios in San Francisco, right?
no, they had one in San Francisco that closed a while back. This one was still in Vegas because I was still
Okay.
in Vegas at the time. This was in the Venetian. So
Nice.
then I was at Postrio for a while. And then when they started building, City Center, they had the Crystals Mall that they put in City Center in the Aria area. They did a brasserie. It was called Brasserie Puck. So it was, French food. And this was, I think, a little bit ahead of its time in Vegas when we were doing this. Then I was over there, and I kind of helped out at a lot of different. I helped out a little bit at Cut. On my days off, I would go work at Chinois to kind of learn how to work the woks and learn how to do had the Asian side and Chinese
Yeah.
food.
Cut's great. I've been to Cut.
Cut is very good, great restaurant.
Yeah. Like,
Um, so yeah, and then from there, I ended up leaving. I had an opportunity to do a restaurant of my own in Malibu. So I left. I think I was about 26 at the time. And then I ended up moving out to Malibu to do a restaurant. It's called Christie's Wood Oven and Wine Bar. So it was overlooking Zuma Beach. So that was fun. But I didn't really get, the business partners I had at the time, didn't give me what I was promised in the beginning. So I ended up, you know, leaving, and all the corporate chefs from Wolfgang, you know, were like, "Hey, we'd love for you to come back, and we have an opportunity for you to go to Colorado." So I went to Colorado, basically to go help the chef. Colorado was in Spago was in the Ritz Carlton on Bachelor Gulch Mountains. So it's a ski in ski out resort. It was great. There was only two restaurants in the hotel. One was, of course, the hotel restaurant, and then the other was Spago. And I mean, I can literally throw a rock and hit the chairlift from our patio. It was pretty amazing. So I went out there to help the previous chef just for winter season because his chef de cuisine left, and he was getting ready to come to the winter season. And of course, it's their busiest time. So mind you, I'm just coming back to the company after leaving and doing my own thing. And I get there on December 15th. We're about 10 days before Christmas time. And apparently Wolfgang goes there every year for his Christmas vacation and spends like a week there. Um, so I'm there, and little did I know, I didn't know this at the time, but the chef that I went to go help was already planning on leaving after that season. So he was just kind of there, but not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of cruising.
He and so he ended up taking Christmas Eve and Christmas off, right? And that's like one of the busiest times, right? And I'm, still getting familiar with the kitchen, the chef, like all the cooks and the menus. Mind you, we have, lunch menu, a dinner menu, a bar menu, three different menus going on. And so, it's Christmas Eve. We have, a special Christmas Eve tasting menu going on, and we have about 400 reservations. It's super busy. Wolfgang comes in, and of course, he's looking for the chef. He's like, "Oh, yeah, where's Park?" And I'm like, "Oh, he's not here today, chef." And he's like, "Oh, well, who's running the kitchen?" And I was like, "Oh, I am, chef." And he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, I think I remember you from Vegas." And I was like, "Oh, wow, like you remember? That's kind of cool."
Yeah.
And so next thing you know, it's like 7 p.m., right? It's like the middle of our dinner service. We're super busy, and he's there with his best friend from Austria, and well, he's there with his wife, of course, and then his best friend from Austria and his wife. And he goes, "Yeah, how about he goes, can you cook me a tasting menu? Cook me a 10-course tasting menu." It's like middle of service, right? 7 o'clock. So I'm just like, "Yes, chef." So he goes and he sits down, and so I start cooking him this fucking tasting menu. And I'm about halfway through the tasting menu, and then his two sons come down. So then he goes, "Oh, my boys are gonna sit at the table over there." He goes, "Cook them. Can you cook them the same tasting menu?" So I'm like, "Sure, no problem, Jeff."
Yep.
So yeah, so longer story longer. I ended up. He was extremely happy. They were super happy. Had a great time. Come to find out that shortly after that, mind you, I was only supposed to be there for the season and then go back. So I was living in LA at the time,
Right.
and I was supposed to go back there. And so Wolfgang ended up sitting me down, kind of at one point, and he's like, "Listen, the chef is leaving. I would love to have you take over as the chef here." And I was like, "Wow, I mean that's pretty big." But I'm like, "Man, do I really want to move to Colorado?" I was like, I was trying to kind of weigh the options, and for my career, it was huge. I'm like, this is a great opportunity for me to come and run this beautiful restaurant, in the mountains
Sure.
on the ski resort. I mean, it was incredible. And at the time, the contract I think was up in like a year or a year and a half from the time that we had talked. And so he goes, "Hey, just get us through until the end of the contract, and I'll send you to any of my restaurants you want to go." So of course they ended up, renewing the contract for some time. So, but it was great. I mean, I loved it. I was out there for about 5.5, 6 years, like I was saying, and it was great because I, really got to express myself as a chef, and I didn't really have all the corporate chefs that are constantly on your back kind of telling you have to do things a certain way. And it was great because Wolfgang would come out, like I said, Wolfgang would come out every year, and I would make him all this cool new things, for him to try. like I remember, for instance, I think this is like, I I mean, 2010, 2011, long time ago. I remember he came out and I made him this Korean style steak tartare, and with his like puffed kimchi, like rice, and like these like seaweed puffed nori crackers, and like this whole little setup. And I made him that and a couple different things. Every time he comes, he always wants to try something new. And so I remember I made him that, and he loved it, absolutely loved it. And so I had this whole menu. I used to always have to send the menu to the corporate chefs to get approval and whatnot. And I remember that was one of the things I put on there. And one of the immediate responses was, "This is not very Wolfgang. You can't have that on the menu. You should change it back to the classic, steak tartare." Little did they know I had already made it for Wolfgang, and he loved it, right? So I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem." So sent them the menu that they wanted to see. As soon as they approved it, I put this Korean steak tartare right back on the menu. Little do we know, on
Yeah.
most of the cut menus now, there's Korean steak tartare, which is pretty funny. But I mean, I'm not saying that I'm the one who started that whole thing, not by any means. But it's just funny because it's like that was cool to have Wolfgang come out all the time, and I get to be able to do some really cool things. And like I said, I got to have a lot of fun in Colorado. I got to do a lot of cool events. They got to do. I started doing these cool pop-up dinners with this lady who had her own produce company called Right Produce, Gretchen. We wanted to do this cool like pop-up dinners type thing where it was kind of like we'd do this whole menu that we'd create, and it would be like a secret location. You'd find out like 24 hours in advance. Obviously, it would be within a vicinity. You'd get the idea, so it wouldn't be like somewhere super far away. But it'd be cool because it would be like a secret location that you get like 24 hours before, and you wouldn't know the menu. It'd be like it was a cool pop up. So we did a few of those, which is very cool. So it was great because I got to do my job there and get to experience Colorado and that beautiful state. But then I used to always, we'd be closed for 3 months out of the year during the off season. So I'd get to I'd go work a couple weeks in LA or in Vegas, and then I'd, probably 2 weeks, then I would take 2 weeks off. So I'd get about a month off a year. It was great. So I loved it. And then, yeah, after Colorado, I was getting ready to kind of get back to California, I should say. And I just remember I was sitting there one night, and I never really had social media, and I just decided one night I was like Facebook had popped up or something, and I joined Facebook, and I remember my best friend sent me a message. He was like, "Holy shit! I thought I would never see the day." And then shortly after that, it says people you may know, and like friends start popping up and whatnot. And I remember one of my buddies popped up, Billy, and he used to be a manager at Spago when I had started. And we've been friends for a long time. And I was like, "Oh man, I hadn't seen him or heard from him in a long time." And so I remember I had reached out to him, and so he was kind of feeling me out to see what where we can work out and if I can come, because he's obviously been in the restaurant business forever too. And then he tells me, he goes, "Hey, do you remember Josh?" And Josh was a buddy of mine. He used to be a server at Spago when I first started too. Well, it turns out that Josh was the vice president of Alexander Steakhouse, the VP. So it was funny because Billy got me reconnected with him. He goes, "Yeah, let me set you up for an interview with Josh and this and that." And mind you, they didn't know anything I've done from the time that I had first started at Spago in Palo Alto up until me being the chef in Colorado. They didn't any of that. They didn't know. So Josh of course wanted to do an interview and whatnot. And I just remember he calls me and his name pops up, same. I mean, I had his same number. I had the same number, and it was funny because we get on the phone and we started talking like we had just talked, like last week, catching up. And so they ended up flying me out to California to come. I did a tasting at Alexander Steakhouse. This is in Cupertino. Mm-hmm. So they flew me out to do a tasting, and next thing you know, they offered me a job. So that's when I ended up coming back from Colorado, came back to the Bay Area, and then I took over Alexander Steakhouse in Cupertino. And I was at the old location, which was kind of at the Valco mall area.
Yeah.
And then they were going to tear down that area to, rebuild. And so we basically relocated. So within a short amount of time of me taking over as a chef there, I got to relocate to a brand new restaurant, which is on Main Street, which much larger restaurant. I mean, it was, 240 or 50 seat restaurant with five banquet rooms. It was huge. So then we moved over there, and that's when, I was there for I don't know exactly the time, a year and a half or so. But of course, at that time, we were very big end users of Wagyu beef. That's where I really started getting my introduction to Japanese beef was when I took over that restaurant. Um, they had a very good beef program, and I remember at the time we had started with, I think, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 prefectures, I think. And, over the time I was really starting to learn more about it. And I think this is in 2017 is when I was one of the 18 chefs from the United States that was invited to go. It was when they first started the program where they were really starting to trying to get more people educated on Japanese beef and kind of get the story out there. And so I remember it was through Trex and Asia International I had got invited to go to Japan and go tour a couple Wagyu farms and kind of get some education on Wagyu beef. And that's where I got introduced to, of course, Mark Melnick, the and then Justin and of course, Guy and Steve Brown. And I just remember we went to Japan, and it was such a cool experience getting to go to some of these farms and just seeing just the care that they take in these animals. And I just remember we were on a plane ride from to Kagoshima, and Guy and I were sitting next to each other, and we just hit it off. We started talking about, of course, food and beef and motorcycles, and we're big motorcycle guys and riders, and we just immediately hit it off. I just remember we had such a good time in Japan. And I remember at the very end of our trip, we're sitting, of course, at the table in front of, the Wagyu Council and everybody, and all of us chefs on the other side, and they're just asking us our experience and how everything was and how we liked everything, and like any feedback. And I'm sitting right next to Steve, and we're just looking at each other, and we're like, man, how, because we love, of course, all the offcuts. That's one of my favorites, one of his favorites. And I just remember he was sitting there, and we're like, man, how could we be able to use all these offcuts? And so he asked the question about getting the offcuts. Well, he said at the time, none of that was coming to the States. It was just basically all the loin sets, the ribeyes, the strips, the tenderloins. And I remember we talked with Guy, and we're talking, and Guy, of course, he's still at Pape Meat Company at the time. And he was just like, let me see about, maybe we can purchase a fucking steer, So that's when, Guy got up in front of the whole Wagyu committee and the council, and he's like, well, if we can't get any of these offcuts, how about I just buy a whole animal? And they're all just looking like sticker shock, like, what did he just say? Does he want to buy a whole animal? Like, I don't think it's ever been done before. So turns out that, they worked it all out, and that's when we were the first ever to import that whole steer. His name was Kotoro, actually, and it was from Kagoshima. And I remember that whole steer came boneless because we couldn't import any bones. And Guy just looks, he goes, you guys got to help me sell this thing. So that's kind of when we started doing all those pop-up dinners, and basically doing all those pop-up dinners create around that whole animal, and had a lot of fun doing that. And then I remember I've always been very fascinated in butchery work. And, butchery is kind of like a lost art. Not a lot of chefs know how to cook and whatnot, but not a lot of chefs know how to butcher and cut properly, right? Which is one of the biggest things, especially when it comes to like costing and portion control and whatnot. Plus, right. I feel like it's just a lost art all around in general these days. So I remember, when we first got back from Japan, Guy had told me where he was working, and he goes, yeah, come up and see the shop. And I was like, dude, I'm definitely going to come see the shop and come check things out. And so I went up and saw him over at Pape Meat Company, and I just remember seeing the shop, and I was like, damn, there's a lot of shit here. This is fucking really cool. And I remember, I walked in there with no intention. I was maybe to buy like a steak or something. I think I walked out of there like $400 or $500 later. I bought sausages and steaks, and just all kinds of stuff. And it was great. And then I remember I was still the executive chef at Alexander Steakhouse. And I remember I just wanted to learn more and just really dive a little bit more deeper in butchery and whatnot. So I remember I would wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I would meet Guy, and then they're at the shop at like 5 o'clock, and I'd go butcher for like 3 or 4 hours in the morning. And then I'd go down to work my chef shift at the steakhouse from like 10 till whenever. And then I actually ended up leaving my chef job at Alexander's to go work full time with Guy over at Pape's and really dive deep into the whole butcher side. And so we were there. I was there with him for some time and through the holidays. And I remember a guy was telling me, he's like, "Oh yeah, man, just wait till the holidays. Holidays are crazy." And I'm thinking like, "Oh yeah, crazy holidays." I'm like, "I'm used to like the restaurant." He goes, "No, no, no, just trust me." I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah, okay." Next, thing you know, the holidays come around at the butcher shop. Holy shit, was he not wrong? My goodness, between all of the pre-orders and the holiday orders, I mean, I was back there filling orders. I mean, just nonstop. I mean, it was insane making these fucking filet roasts. That, oh my gosh, I mean, it was a great roast, but goodness gracious, I never want to make any of those ever again. Literally, this whole tenderloin that is, you know, rubbed with mustard and seasoned and then wrapped in prosciutto and tied, and oh my gosh, literally every fucking person would order one, all different sizes, and man, but it was super fun though. I loved it. It was so much fun, getting to set up holiday counters and just, you know, it was really cool. That's when I really got to do a lot of work with dry aged beef, because they had a whole dry age program there, and you know, I absolutely love cutting dry aged beef. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to cut. And just in general, I just love the smell. Each piece has its own unique aroma and super cool. But then, yeah, shortly after that is when Guy and I had the opportunity to come do the Niku Steakhouse project in the city. And actually, originally, I was going to be the chef of the steakhouse, and then he was going to do the butcher shop. And then before all that had happened, I was actually helping out in the process when they were still building at Omakase and Okane, helping in the kitchen there.
Mm.
And then, you know, at the time I was trying to make things work, and you know, my son, they were going to move back to Vegas, and so I was like, you know what, it's more important that I, you know, have this relationship with my son. So I kind of dropped everything, and I said, look, I'm going to move back to Vegas, and so I ended up doing that, which that was, you know, short lived. So then I had the opportunity to come back and then actually run the butcher shop with Guy, which I think was kind of a blessing in disguise, because then I got to come back and really dive more into the whole butcher side. And then, yeah, we did the whole opening the butcher shop, and very, very cool, very fun times. So yeah, we did that. And then, you know, in between that time, after I had left the shop, you know, I was still doing some work off and on as a consultant or contractor for Wolfgang. And so I think I did for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years or so. You know, I was traveling around and helping, you know, open locations and train staff and doing large events. And, you know, we opened a big facility, restaurant catering facility in Houston at the Texas Medical Center. And it's funny, I remember Chef Erick told us it was going to be a 6 week project. It was about a 6 month project by the time it was all said and done, but very cool, fun experience. So yeah, I was doing, you know, work off and on, contract work with Wolfgang, and, you know, did, of course, the Oscars several years, and that was fun. And then now currently well, I had surgery right after I did the Oscars last year. I had surgery. I had a bone in my wrist that was, I just thought over all the years of cutting and chopping and, you know, just me getting old, that it was just, you know, maybe getting arthritis or something. Turns out that I had a half dead bone in there that was flipped upside down, my scaphoid bone, which was from an injury back when I was like a teenager.
Whoa.
So the doctors were like, yeah, we need to get that thing out of there. So I had surgery back last March, I believe. And, you know, they say, you know, should heal up in a couple months. That was actually shortly after I saw you when we did that Takamori event.
Right. Which was
And then,
awesome.
yeah, actually speaking back to the Takamori, when we first got back from Japan, you know, being at Alexander Steakhouse, you know, digging more into this whole Japanese Wagyu, I was, you know, wanted to try all these different prefectures. And, you know, it was very fascinating to see. I actually was able to try, I think at one point I had about 10 or 11 prefectures on the menu at one point. And it was cool being able to see and the range of, you know, from southern Japan all the way up from like Kagoshima, Satsuma, all the way up to northern Japan, Hokkaido, where it's freezing cold, you know, and obviously in southern Japan where it's subtropical, to see the difference in flavor profile of the beef and like the range all the way in between. It was very, very cool. And so I remember when we first came back to Japan, from Japan, I told Justin, I said, look, man, I want something that's exclusive, like to me only here at the steakhouse that nobody else can get. Like, you know, I want to try to find something. So that's when he was working for a while, and he ended up finding Takamori Wagyu, which, you know, for those who don't know, they call it the drunken Wagyu because it's fed all of the sake and the beer mash from the Dasei distillery, because it's right next to there. In the Yamaguchi prefecture, all these cattle are hand selected by Mr. Numamoto-san, which is a master butcher from Japan. Incredible product. I mean, it's one of my favorites, hands down, as far as the Japanese Wagyu goes. Anyways, so Justin ended up getting that for me, and it was cool. So this is back in, I think, 2017. So we were the first ever to import that takamori to the States. So, between myself and, of course, with the help of Trex and Justin, we were the first ones to import takamori Wagyu to the States back in 2017. So pretty cool to be the one kind of responsible for that, being the first to be into the States. And now, of course, it is, I shouldn't say all over, but you can find it
sought after.
Yeah. So very, very cool. And
that was the first time I had it, when you were cooking some skewers, and I was like, this is going to be
pretty incredible project or product. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going back to what we were talking about before with the, doing all these parties and stuff with Wolf, and I had my surgery, and then I was kind of, at one point my surgery's healing, I'm checking up on the doctor, and I'm just, at one point in the beginning when I had the surgery, I was kind of depressed because I'm like, fuck, man, now I'm going to be sitting home, I have nothing to do, no job, like, of course the chef still wanted me to come and do work without my hand, just do more of like, managing work and like, whatnot. But, I'm just like, man, this sucks. And after a couple months, I'm checking up on the doctor. I'm like, cool, my cast is going to come off. They take the cast off. Doctor looks at it. Oh, it's not healed enough. I think it was about 3 times I went and got the cast taken off. And they're like, nope, we got to put you right back in it. So I'm just like, fuck, man, like, this sucks. And, like I said, it was probably about 6 months before this thing was finally healed. And then, of course, hadn't even started physical therapy yet. And then, randomly, one of my buddies, Brandon, who's I worked with in Vegas and whatnot, he's doing he has his own restaurant group that he's doing in Montana. But he used to be a private chef out here for a long time in the Silicon Valley Bay Area. And I remember he reposted on his story. I'm driving home from taking my son to daycare. Mind you, I'm still in my brace and just still kind of on my tail end of my recovery. And, sitting in traffic and, looking through, and I see on his story that he reposted one of his friends' things looking for a private chef for a family in San Francisco. So I don't even think twice because I never really respond to any of that stuff. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Then I get home, and for some reason I was like, you know what? I said, if Brandon knows these people, it's got to be good people, So I reached back out to him and I said, hey, do you know the family? He goes, I don't, but I can get you in contact with who does. So I'm like, cool. So he sends me his buddy Justin's resume, his email. He goes, here, send your resume to my friend Justin, and he'll pass along to the family. And so I'm like, cool. And I think this is over like Labor Day weekend. So I take my computer with me. Mind you, I'm like, no rush, not even really looking for a job. I'm like, hey, if this works out, great. If not, kind of is what it is, no biggie. So I take my computer with me. I'm going to update my resume to send it. Well, my computer's dead. So I'm like, well, guess I'll wait till I get home. So we spend the weekend down there. I get home. And I ended up updating my resume finally. I sent it to him on like Monday. Mind you, this was like on Friday when we had spoke, so the whole weekend goes by. So I sent him my resume, and he emails me back. He goes, oh, good morning, Jared. Thank you for your resume. He goes, I pass it along to the family. He goes, just so you know, he goes, we're already in the process of a couple tastings and interviews with some chefs. But if anything changes, I'll let you know. Cool. So like 3 hours later, I get an email from their personal assistant. Hi, Jared, this is so-and-so, personal assistant. I would really like to set up an interview with you. And I'm like, oh, great. So I'm like, cool. So end up setting up a FaceTime interview or a Zoom call on Wednesday. So Wednesday, I'm doing this Zoom call interview. And I mean, I'm thinking interviews going to be like 20, 30 minutes. I'm on the Zoom call for probably like an hour and 20 minutes and talk with her. And it's funny because at first I start talking a little bit about my background and whatnot. And she's trying to take notes. And then she goes, do you mind if I just record you so I can reference back so I can talk to my husband? I'm like, sure, no problem. So she starts recording. The more and more we start talking, she's just getting more excited and just like about just kind of, and I'm just kind of like not even going through my whole story, just kind of hitting like just kind of some of the brief notes and like kind of like the key points that I think she needs to know,
Yeah.
And so she's more so excited because, oh, do you think we can set up a tasting? And mind you, I'm very transparent about it with my coming out of my surgery and being on the tail end of my recovery and just starting physical therapy, just the whole thing, just so they're aware. So next thing you know, she's like, well, cool, we set up a tasting. And I'm like, Sure. So this is Wednesday. So she goes, well, tomorrow we have a chef already coming to do a tasting, but you think you can do it for Friday? I'm like, okay. So I send her over a menu that night, and she picks a couple things that she wants me to make. And so mind you, this is like, Wednesday night. So Thursday or Wednesday night, I send her the menu and have it all approved. So Thursday, I go do my
Yeah.
shopping. Friday, I'm doing this tasting at their place. Uh, Saturday, I get a phone call. They offer me a job. Sunday, I started working. And I was like, holy shit, that is crazy. So yeah, I ended up, so now I cook for a family, a private chef for a family of three in the city. And it's great. I mean, easiest job of my life. And it's great because I get to spend more time with the family and especially with my little one. It's great.
Yeah, you're a new dad, right?
Yeah, my son is about 15 months, so and
Yeah,
he's
congrats.
yeah, he's great. I love him.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's been great. So uh, yeah, it's very, very, very fun. And it's funny because I guess the funny part is, I kind of like just came out of left field because apparently I was like the fifth or the sixth chef that came through to actually like do tasting and everything. And I just kind of came through on a whim, wasn't even really looking for anything and
Mhm.
kind of landed in my lap, which is great because, you know, I get to still do what I love. And it's great because I mean, I have the freedom to kind of be very creative and make kind of pretty much whatever I want for the most part. I mean, he's very simple, so,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm gonna
but I
ask
get to
you
be
what
very
you're
adventurous.
gonna ask you what you're making, some of the things you're making, but before that, Guy had a question for you. But I put it out there that hey, I'm interviewing Jared. Any questions, any podcast questions for the guest, And Guy says, what wakes you up in the morning about being a chef? That's Guy's
What
question.
wakes me
Shout
up
out
in the
to Guy
morning?
Crims at Niku Butcher Shop.
Yeah. Hello, guy.
He was a guest as well
Oh, I
early
know.
on.
We actually
Yeah.
just spoke this morning.
Awesome. But yeah, what gets you up in the morning about being a chef?
I mean, to be honest with you, I love waking up and just getting inspired by new product. I mean, to be honest with you, I dream about food. I feel like a lot of times, and I feel like my brain never shuts off, and so I'm always constantly thinking about like the next thing I'm gonna make, or how I'm gonna do something different, or what's the next. I don't even know. I don't know. I just sometimes I wake up and I love getting inspiration from the farmers market. Like on Saturdays, I love going. I take my son. We go every Saturday to the farmers market, and he loves it just as much as I do because he gets to taste all the things and see all the things. And but yeah, I always just think about how I can either improve on something that I had done the day before, or how I can just make something better, or just constantly evolve. Because at the end of the day, you can always strive for perfection, but nothing's ever going to be perfect. So it's like, how can you just be better than you were the day before and make something different and just learn something new, learn a new technique, learn a new skill, learn something different, learn a new way to do something, right?
Yeah. And then with all the, you've been in a ton of kitchens. Is there a time like, I want to describe it to everyone. Sometimes people don't realize how the on the fly work it can be.
Yeah.
Like, is there can you remember a time where you're like, this has got to be like the putting me in the most, like obviously making a tasting menu for Wolfgang on the fly was probably a huge task for you coming into a new kitchen. Was there any other time where you're like, I can't believe this is happening? Like, I try to tell people when like chefs take that nice picture with the perfect white coat for the
Oh
magazine or
yeah.
for the
Okay.
article or for the, and then they got to take that one off. They put the dirty one back on and they go in and go, all right, he's not here. This order didn't come in. This is broken.
Oh,
This is
I'll give you a good
missing.
story.
So
I'll give you a good
it'd be,
story.
it'd
So
be, yeah, tell us one of those.
Thanksgiving. All right. So
Okay.
we're going back to Colorado, right? So
Okay.
Thanksgiving kind of, usually we reopen like the week before Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving kind of starts off the kick to the busy season, right?
Yeah.
So we're super busy. I think we had about 400 reservations for Thanksgiving, and majority of course, everybody wants the turkey dinner, right? So about 85% of the menu that you sell is the preset turkey dinner plate, anyways, because everybody wants it. They don't want to make it, and especially if they're out. And
Right.
so, I of course, brine like 25 or 30 turkeys or whatever. But we were so busy the day before. So I had this whole plan. I'm like, cool, we're gonna I'm gonna go in. I think it was, what was it, Tuesday morning before Thanksgiving or something, or Wednesday morning before Thanksgiving. I think I got there at like 6 o'clock in the morning, right? Started doing the prep, started getting ready for the day. Mind you, I already knew we had a super busy day coming up, not just with, with the prep, but with, we did lunch and dinner, right? So it was super, I mean, we were doing just as many covers for lunch that we do for dinner. I mean, sometimes busier for lunch actually, because everybody was skiing and, it was actually busier for lunch. So we were so busy that we didn't get a chance to prep a lot of the stuff that we wanted for Thanksgiving, right? And I'm just like, we're gonna be in the shits if we don't get this stuff prepped. So we finally finished service, and it's like, like 11 o'clock at night, and we had so much work to do for the next day to get ready for Thanksgiving. And so I just looked at my sous chef, and I was like, bro, we got so much shit to do. And he just looked at me and goes, fuck it, bro, let's do it. Let's just start working. So we ended up staying overnight, prepping all the stuff for Thanksgiving as much as we could, to make the stuffing, the gravy, the cram. I mean, just you name it, just everything. Mm-hmm. Mind you, we had about 400 plus reservations for Thanksgiving, anyways, for service.
Yeah.
So we ended up staying all night to prep. I remember I left, I think, at like 4 o'clock in the morning to go home just to shower because I needed to clean my name. I've been working since 6 a.m. the day before, right? And we're already working through the night to the next day. So I go home, take a shower. I'm back at like 4:30. Leave at 4, back at 4:30. And we're continuing to prep, finish prepping through the morning, get ready. And we're super busy still, mind you, getting prepped for that day for lunch service. And then still trying to finish up the stuff for dinner service for Thanksgiving. And of course, you can't be carving turkeys and all that during service time. So all those have to be roasted, 25 plus turkeys all have to be roasted and carved and trayed up and ready for service time. So we're coming around and I just sharpened my knife to do all these turkeys and it's coming down to the wire because we open at 5:30 and it's like 5 o'clock. And I'm like, dude, I still have to break down 25 turkeys. And they're finishing setting up the line, getting ready for service, all the line cooks and the sous chefs, everybody. And so I'm like trying to break these turkeys down as fast as I can, like carving them, getting them and thing. And dude, I ended up coming down and I ended up cutting half of my freaking finger off on one of these things coming down because my knife ended up going straight through the bone of the turkey. And then, of course, my finger happened to be resting. I don't even know how it was or why it was. It was on the part of cutting board where it went through and fucking went through my finger. I was like, fuck, on the same hand, which is it was even fucking crazier, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, man. And all of a sudden, it's funny because I just get like Casper ghost white. And everyone's like, oh, chef, you should go to the hospital. I'm like, fuck that, dude. So I go downstairs to loss prevention and it's funny because one of the engineers, Toby, he was in there and he used to work in the kitchen, whatever. And, I'm sitting there and I literally, even them, they'll come in like, man, you look like fucking Casper, bro. You look like a ghost. And like, I'm just like all white and I feel like I'm going to pass out. And he goes, but I can't go anywhere. So I'm like, dude, we're about to fucking start service. Like, we need to fucking go. So Toby goes, oh, come here, shut my finger won't stop bleeding. It's the tip of the finger too, of course, won't stop bleeding. So he's like, he goes, oh, chef, don't worry. Come here. I'll take care of you. So he walks me back to the engineer's office and he fucking has some fucking shit he puts on there and stops there. He wraps me all up and fucking went right back upstairs and fucking did the whole dinner service. And, we went through and pretty much finished up. We did ended up having a great service and, we did about 400 plus, covers. And I think it was about a 42-hour shift later and it was finally done. But, that was brutal, but it pulled it off and definitely a memory that will last forever, for sure.
For sure. Wow.
But
amazing, dude.
Good times though. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah. That's a challenge. Not many would make it through for sure. So
Yeah.
I commend you for that. So like what excites you about food now? And like, I know it's fun to go to the market and see what's fresh and what's happening. What's going through your mind creatively for cooking?
These days I actually just recently made the Chinese ducks again. For Christmas time, I made it for the holidays for the clients, which was great because I was able to shout out the guy for letting me use the the shop to age them in the cooler, and which was cool because I got to show him the process and he got to see how to make them and everything, and uh, so it was cool to be able to do that. But I actually had it was a funny story because I had pre-ordered some whole ducks, and then long story short, I wasn't sure if they were going to come in time, so I had a backup plan, and next thing you know, I ended up having double the ducks, and so a friend of mine had sent me this recipe for this really cool uh, spice mixture that they make with Earl Grey tea because they used to use to dry age the duck breasts and whatnot. So I ended up taking I had about three whole ducks that were left over, and it was cool because I ended up taking legs and confit them, cured them, and then I took the breasts and I made this really cool Earl Grey spice mixture and did this dry aged duck, which was outstanding. I had a couple of my chef friends over. They were in town visiting. Happened to be ones that I used to travel with all the time. It happened to be in town right around my birthday time, so I had them come over for dinner one night, and we made this whole spread. Duck confit, and I made this dry aged duck and foie gras, and like this whole spread. And the duck was outstanding, super super good. So I've been definitely having fun with doing some experimenting with some little dry aging here and there, and it's cool because I kind of had a lot of freedom with my job now to kind of make a lot of different things. So I make everything from classic beef Wellingtons one night to of course a chicken pot pie, which is one of my clients' favorites. I'll make him one of those like once a week. To being able to do of course fresh pasta with white truffles, or you know, the whole like big sashimi spreads, because she loves a lot of the seafood and whatnot. So there'll be times I'll do these, grand sashimi spreads. I'll get a whole tray of Hokkaido uni from Guy, and I'll do that a bunch of different ways, and go to Tokyo Fish Market and get toro and shima aji and gampachi, and I mean pretty much all these different things, and scallops and meals. All they do a lot of different crudos and ceviches, and so that's been really fun to be able to be very creative and do a lot of different things. And it's cool because my son loves food, so I mean even him from such a young age, I mean he loves food. I mean I think that definitely makes his day go around. He reminds me so much of myself when I was a kid. Um, so it's very very cool.
That's awesome. What's something that you eat off the clock that's your like
Uh,
you make for yourself, or even a restaurant or somewhere you're like, yeah, I got to go get one of these.
well, to be honest, dude, we don't really. I mean, I feel like when we do go out, a lot of times we get disappointed because even my fiance always tells me, she goes, "Baby, I feel like your food is better than a lot of the restaurants," and we go out. And
Right.
plus, it's like for me too. It's nice because I bought one of those freezers from Costco, those big standing ones that have all the different drawers.
Mm-hmm.
So now, of course, I just have. I mean, that thing is packed with. I mean, I have everything in there from different sauces and stocks, and handmade pastas and agnolotis and steaks, and I mean, I have so much different things. And there are all those dried ducks and duck confit, and I have a whole load of foie gras, and I mean, I literally have so much stuff. So it's like I pretty much just say like, hey, what do we want to eat tonight? And just like tonight, I'm actually making had some really nice Scottish salmon, so I'm gonna do some steamed salmon with stir fry vegetables. I made like a nice toasted garlic chili soy, and with some steamed rice, and make a nice little, I should say, a little healthy-ish dinner tonight. So, but it's nice because I mean I get to prep everything, and I feel like even on my days off, I feel like I'm just always gravitated to the kitchen naturally. It's like my comfort zone, it's my favorite spot. So,
Yeah,
um,
awesome. Yeah, before I wrap it up, appreciate your time. Some fun questions. What is something that's in the kitchen that's like your, a lot of times you call it a everyday carry, like, wallet, your phone, gear. What's something in the kitchen that you're like, man, I can't live without. Like this makes my day easy.
microplane.
Okay. The skinny one or
Yeah.
the
Oh
different
yeah.
kinds? Yeah.
Just the
Yeah.
traditional good old microplane.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
mean, good for everything.
mm-hmm, zesting and just
Just all around
cheese and
grating garlic,
yeah.
cheese. I mean, all kind of. That's definitely a go-to one for sure.
Okay.
But of course, then you definitely have to have your nice sharp knife.
Mm-hmm. Is there a particular knife that you have? Like a lot of times people want to hear what chefs are
I mean,
using.
honestly, bro, I have so many different
Yeah.
ones, and yeah, I mean, a lot of them. Some of the brands I remember the names, some I don't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely use mostly Japanese knives though, for sure.
Awesome.
But of course, besides when I do butchery work, then of course I gotta have the good old, scimitar, Fortuner
Yeah.
scimitar to bust out for,
Yep.
for the butchery work. So,
Awesome. And then the other question I have is if there was a recipe that you want everyone else to make or something that they should try that you're like, hey, this is something you should try or you should try to make at home.
hmm.
Like a dish that, you're like, hey, if you've never had this, maybe you should try it.
I will say, so since I started my new job, the previous chef, so uh, the client, she loves this crab omelet. And so she goes, oh, the chef makes me this crab omelet. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, oh, yeah, crab omelet, I'll make you a crab omelet. And so immediately she says, oh, J5, so the lady from Thailand who, wears the goggles and has the
Yeah.
Michelin stars. So it's that omelet. I'm like, oh, shit. So the previous chef actually used to make it for her and he had learned how to make it. And so he actually taught me how to make it. And it's a very, very challenging thing. You can actually watch some videos and it shows you how to make it and everything. It's a very challenging dish to make because it kind of goes beyond everything that you think of as a chef about making an omelet because you're literally like frying this and like getting it crispy. But for those of you who don't know what it is, just look up a video on YouTube of a J5 crab omelet and you'll see the omelet and the ways and like how they make it. But it is incredible. I actually got to try it for the first time, of course, not actually going to Thailand. And so I make it for her often now when she has friends over. Like I said, it's a challenging one to make for sure, but there's only 4 ingredients. It's super, super simple the ingredients are simple. It's a technique.
Yeah.
But I would highly recommend then you serve it with a really nice, like a shrimp, like chili paste that she actually brings one back from Thailand that's really, really good. But you can find them in the Asian grocery store. But yeah, I would suggest looking up that video and try to figure out how to make that because it is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen obviously the videos on it. It looks incredible. It's packed with crab, like it's
Yeah.
stacked in there, and you're just like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
she
right.
uses the lump crab. I use all the Dungeness leg meat.
Okay.
Uh,
Man.
so super, super. But yeah, like I said, it's definitely a challenging one to make, but it is incredible,
Okay.
outstanding.
I might have to hit you up on that one.
Highly recommend.
All
And
right.
then it's even better when you get some of that Wagyu fat from Guy, and you can do it in the Wagyu fat.
Yep. Yep. For sure. Appreciate your time. Like, is there anything that you would tell aspiring chefs that are coming into the culinary world? What would you tell them?
To be honest with you, just you know, be passionate and be open minded and just try to soak up, especially for young chefs growing up or coming up. Just be a sponge. Learn as much as you can from everybody. Every chef will have a different way of doing something or different technique or different idea. But I always tell people this: nobody knows everything. You know what I mean? So, you can learn things I've learned so many things, not only from chefs and mentors and different colleagues, but from dishwashers and busboys and food runners. And just little things. So it's like always have an open mind to learn something new. And like I said, just like with anything you do, just be passionate, and really love what you do because if you don't, then there's really no point in doing it, and especially in the culinary business, it is hard industry. And if you don't love it, don't waste your time because it's hard and it
Yeah.
definitely will take a toll on you for sure. But like I said, for me, I love it. I love every aspect of it. I love the camaraderie. I love the hard work. I love the reward that it pays off. It's very, very satisfying. And like I said, me just all around, I love food. So, I
Awesome.
feel like it's not work at all for me.
All right. I mean, is there anything else you want to leave the folks? I know you're kind of doing your private gig, but appreciate you sharing your story and telling everybody about all your origins. But floor is yours. You can leave advice or say anything you want. It's all you.
Shoot, I don't really have much, but definitely want to give a big shout out to, of course, my mentor and my second father figure, Chef Erick Klein, and for, of course, kind of paving the way for me as a young one in my career, and kind of molded me to the chef and the person I am today. And yeah, kind of owe it all to him, you know. But other than
Awesome.
that, I mean, not too much. Just, you know, I think everybody should just really take the time and go break some bread with their friends and loved ones, and, you know, enjoy a good meal and go experience something different. And, you know, food brings people together, you know, no matter what's going on. So, you know, enjoy some good food and good company, and enjoy your life, you know.
Totally agree. Perfect, man. Thank you. We're gonna
Yes,
shut it
sir.
down. Appreciate everybody for listening. Talk. We're out.